안녕하세요, Dave입니다. Today we are going to do chapters 1 and 2 of The Adventures of Captain Underpants, Book 1. When you hear this sound, check the worksheet so you can follow along.
Chapter 1 George and Harold. Meet George Beard and Harold Hutchins. George is the kid on the left with the tie and the flat top.
Flat top means 상고머리.
Harold is the one on the right with the t-shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now.
Pick your noses. 코를 후비다.
George and Harold were best friends. They had a lot in common. They lived right next door to each other, and they were both in the same 4th grade class at Jerome Horwitz Elementary School. George and Harold were usually responsible kids.
Usually means 원래. Responsible means 책임지고 있는.
Whenever anything bad happened, George and Harold were usually responsible. But don't get the wrong idea about these two.
Don't get the wrong idea is 잘못된 생각 하지 마세요.
George and Harold were actually very nice boys. No matter what everybody else thought, they were good, sweet, and lovable. Well, okay, maybe they weren't so sweet and lovable, but they were good nonetheless.
Nonetheless means 그래도 여전히.
It's just that George and Harold each had a silly streak a mile long.
Silly streak is 바보 같은 경향. 1 mile is 1609m.
Usually, that silly streak was hard to control. Sometimes it got them into trouble, and once it got them into big trouble.
Big trouble is 큰 잘못 아니면 큰 문제.
But before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. Chapter 2 Treehouse Comics, Inc. After a hard day of cracking jokes,
Joke is 농담.
pulling pranks,
Prank is 장난.
and causing mayhem at school,
Mayhem is 신체 상해. Cracking jokes, pulling pranks, and causing mayhem means 농담하고 장난치고 신체 상해하고 있어요.
George and Harold liked to rush to the old treehouse in George's backyard. Inside the treehouse were 2 big, old, fluffy chairs,
Fluffy is 솜털.
a table, a cupboard crammed with junk food,
Cupboard is 찬장. Crammed is 잔득들이 있는. Junk food is fast food.
and a padlocked crate.
Padlocked is 자물쇠 있는. A padlock crate means 자물쇠 있는 상자.
Filled with pencils, pens, and stacks of paper.
Stacks are 말뚝.
Now, Harold loved to draw,
Love to draw is 그리는 것 좋아요.
and George loved to make up stories. And together, the two boys spent hours and hours writing and drawing their very own comic books. Over the years, they had created hundreds of their own comics, starring dozens of their own superheroes.
Dozen is 12개짜리.
First, there was Dogman. Then came Timmy the Talking Toilet. And who could forget the Amazing Cow Lady? But the all-time greatest superhero they ever made up had to be the amazing Captain Underpants. George came up with the idea. Most superheroes look like they're flying around in their underwear.
Underwear is 속옷.
He said, well, this guy actually is flying around in his underwear.
Actually is flying means 진짜 날고 있어요.
The two boys laughed and laughed. Yeah, said Harold, he could fight with wedgie power.
Wedgie is 바지 뒷춤을 잡고 들어 올려 바지가 엉덩이 사이에 끼게 하는 것.
George and Harold spent entire afternoons writing and drawing the comic adventures of Captain Underpants. He was their coolest superhero ever.
Coolest superhero ever is 제일 멋진 슈퍼히로.
Luckily for the boys,
Luckily is 운 좋게.
the secretary at Jerome Horwitz Elementary School was much too busy to keep an eye on the copy machine. So whenever they got a chance, Harold and George would sneak into the office.
Sneak is 몰래 하는.
And run off several hundred copies of their latest Captain Underpants adventure.
Run off several copies means 복사를 했어요.
After school, they sold their homemade comics on the playground for 50 cents each.
And if you want to continue, click here for chapters 3 and 4. See you next time.